Hello, fellow fairy friends. It's Allie back with another video. Ellie's here as well. Do you want to say anything? No, she's sleepy. I feel like we're getting to know each other again, and something that has changed about me in the last couple of years is I am fully a fanfiction girly. Yep. Which might come as a surprise to a lot of you that have been here for a while, because back in the day I used to use the word fan fiction like a slur. If I was reading and reviewing a book that I thought was poorly written, I would say this reads like fan fiction. I am ashamed, I'm embarrassed. You will never hear that come out of my mouth ever again, because now that I've actually read fan fiction, I have learned through experience that a lot of it is written better than most books that are traditionally published and professionally edited. I primarily read Dramione fan fiction. It's my drug of choice. I haven't ventured out to read anything else. I probably will, but I have a whole list of fics that I need to get through, and some of them are like 1,000 pages long. I know. But what I think fan fiction does well, just as well, if not better than books that are traditionally published, is angst, yearning, enemies to lovers, and morally gray characters. Fanfiction is not held back by the constraints of traditional publication, and it's not being written for a mass market, so it doesn't have to necessarily be palatable for a mass market. In my opinion, when people say that they want an enemies to lovers book, they don't actually mean that. They want rivals to lovers. They want miscommunication to lovers, or we got off on the wrong foot to lovers, or annoyance to lovers, or general dislike to lovers. They don't want true enemies to lovers, because true enemies to lovers is ugly and toxic in some cases. Because when you're true enemies, like on a deep cellular level, that means that you might be on opposite sides of a war, or on opposite sides ideologically, or there's a lot of hurt and betrayal and pain there, and that's not necessarily appealing to most people. Some fics that I've read that portray this really well is Secrets and Masks. This is some of the most toxic stuff I've ever read in my entire life. Like, this romance is not something that should ever be emulated or romanticized, but I just could not stop reading. This is about Draco and Hermione. It's during a war. She gets taken hostage by Draco and his cronies and basically used as a weapon against the Order. But it's enemies to lovers, and it's very toxic, and you have to know what you're getting into when you are reading stuff like this. But did I enjoy the experience? Yes, I did. It's like 900 pages, and I finished it in a couple of days, which is nuts. Another one that does this really well is Manacled, which is, to me, god tier writing. It's currently being rewritten for traditional publication without all of the Harry Potter IP, and I think it's going to be published at the end of 2025. It's called Alchemized. The cover was just revealed, and oh my gosh, I love it. If you can handle it and you've been considering getting into fan fiction, I would recommend it, but make sure to always read the trigger warnings, because it can be super, super dark. I started with Manacled and I was underprepared. This is Dramione fan fiction that's partially inspired by The Handmaid's Tale, so there are graphic descriptions of rape, murder, torture, basically all of the above. Like, it's rough. It made me physically ill. I cried my eyes out. I cried over this fic for like 3 days straight after I finished, but it is some of the most beautiful writing and storytelling that I have ever read in my entire life. I will never be over it. I've not read a single thing that compares to it. This does angst and enemies to lovers and morally gray characters and anti-heroes the way that I have never seen in traditional publication. And I think that because it's not traditionally published, it can take it there, you know? So I'm wondering how much of that kind of stuff is going to be taken out of Alchemized. Anyways, I'm just rambling at this point, but it starts off, I think the first sentence of the synopsis is Harry Potter is dead. So it's in a world where Voldemort has won, basically. And so you are now seeing what the wizarding world is like under his regime. If I talk about this too much, I will start crying because it's so heartbreaking. This is how much this fic affected me and changed me. Manacled is peak morally gray characters, peak anti-hero, and what works here, in my opinion, is that when you have an anti-hero doing horrible, awful, terrible, reprehensible, unforgivable things, you have to be able to see the train of thought or the experiences that led them to that point. You have to say, oh yeah, they're doing awful things, but I can see how they got there. This fic also perfectly illustrates the effects of war, PTSD, long-term trauma. It's so good. I wouldn't change a single thing about it. Another one of my favorites that's completely different vibes, it's a rom-com, is Draco Malfoy and the Mortifying Ordeal of Being in Love. This is also being rewritten for traditional publication, I heard. This follows Draco Malfoy, who's an Auror, and Hermione Granger, who is a scientist trying to find a cure for, it's not vampirism, it's for people who have been turned into werewolves. And so they are on this journey. It has high stakes, but it still remains kind of funny and lighthearted at times. The yearning, the tension, the buildup, it does it so well. I was reading this fic and I'm like, holy crap, this is just as good as any rom-com I have ever read that's been traditionally published. Like it completely switched my way of thinking. Yeah, this one's so good, so cute. If you want to start out with something that's not like horribly, terribly depressing like Manacled, start with this. Or you could do what I did, and I read Manacled, I was emotionally destroyed, and then I picked up Draco Malfoy and the Mortifying Ordeal of Being in Love to help me get over it and kind of like process that. Fanfiction really is the closest that you can get to being in a multiverse. Because you could read about the same characters that are in so many different scenarios and different universes and different outcomes. It's the multiverse.